40 minutes. That is how long it took. From the moment Thomas Massie made his discovery public, holding up the document in a secure DOJ reading room, announcing what he had found, putting the name Les Wexner into the record as a redacted co-conspirator in a child sex trafficking document, to the moment the Department of Justice, quietly, without announcement, without explanation, without any acknowledgement that anything had happened, unredacted that name and put it back into the public database. 40 minutes. And when Bondi stood at that witness table 2 days later and tried to use those 40 minutes as a defense, within 40 minutes, Wexner's name was added back. Massie had 4 words ready for her. 4 words. He had been waiting to say from the moment he walked out of that reading room and understood exactly what he had found within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed. Watch what happens when Bondi tries to laugh it off. Watch her say red-handed with a smirk, like the speed of the correction proves it was never a problem. Watch Massie look at her with the expression of someone who wrote the law she is supposed to be complying with and say it again where he's listed as a co-conspirator. Watch this video until the end, because what Massie documented in that hearing room wasn't just one redaction error on one document. It was the proof that the DOJ knew exactly which names to hide, knew exactly where those names were most dangerous, and fixed the one they got caught on in 40 minutes flat while leaving everything else in place. If you're new to this channel, subscribe right now and turn on notifications. What Massie found and what he proved in that hearing is the most damaging single exchange of this entire investigation. You need to understand who Les Wexner is before you can understand why this matters. Wexner is not a peripheral figure in the Epstein story. He is the origin of the story. He is the man who in the 1990s gave Jeffrey Epstein power of attorney over his entire financial empire. He is the man whose money built Epstein's world. The private jet, the island, the townhouse in New York that became Epstein's base of operations for his trafficking network. His name appears, according to Bondi herself in the hearing, more than 4,000 times in the released Epstein files. 4,000. No other non-Epstein figure comes close to that number of appearances across the full document set. Wexner has maintained for years that he was a victim too. That Epstein stole money from him, that he was conned, that he had no knowledge of the crimes. His lawyer said in December that the assistant U.S. attorney in charge of the Epstein investigation had stated, at the time, that Wexner was neither a co-conspirator nor target in any respect. Wexner testified before Congress in February 2026. He said he was duped by a world-class con man. But inside the FBI's own internal documents the Bureau created in 2019, the same year Epstein died in that jail cell, Wexner was listed differently. Not as a victim, not as a witness, as a potential co-conspirator in a document whose title was not laundering or fraud or financial crimes. The title was child sex trafficking. That document was among the files Congress ordered, released under the Epstein Files Transparency Act that Massie co-authored. And when the DOJ released the files, that specific page, the one where Wexner's name appeared under the label co-conspirators in a child sex trafficking document, had a black box over the name, a redaction in a document whose entire purpose was to list who the FBI believed was implicated. Massie spent 2 days in the DOJ's secure reading room before the February 11th hearing. He reviewed unredacted versions of the documents Congress had ordered released, and he found it. The document, the title, the redaction, the proof that the department had chosen specifically to hide Wexner's name in the one place it appeared most incriminating, not among the 4,000 other references, but in the one FBI document where the Bureau itself had tagged him as a potential child sex trafficking co-conspirator. He raised it publicly before the hearing. He and Rwana announced it. The DOJ, within 40 minutes of that announcement, quietly unredacted the name and restored it to the document. They did not announce the correction. They did not explain why the redaction had been made. They did not identify who had authorized it. They simply fixed it, hoping that the speed of the correction would work as a defense. Within 40 minutes, it's back. See, no problem. House Judiciary Committee, Rayburn House Office Building, Wednesday, February 11th, 2026. The hearing had been running for hours. Democrats had fought, shouted, called Bondi a cover-up operation, walked out of their chairs, demanded apologies for 11 survivors in white. Bondi had deflected every one of them, called them theatrical, pivoted to Merrick Garland, called Racine a washed-up loser, called every question about accountability a political stunt. Then Massie took the microphone and the room shifted in a different way from the Democratic exchanges. Not angrier, more precise, the specific attention of people who recognize that the person speaking has already done the work before arriving at the room, has read the documents, has built the case, knows exactly where this is going. I need to stop right here. If you've watched this far, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications, because here is what made Massie's exchange categorically different from everything else in that hearing. Every Democrat was attacking Bondi with arguments. Massie was attacking her with documents, her own department's documents, documents she had signed off on releasing, documents the DOJ could not deny existed. Massie had them in his hands. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Is the 40-minute unredaction a defense or proof of the crime? Massie approached the table from a different angle. He did not start with accusations. He started with evidence. He held up 3 documents, displaying them behind him on the committee room screen. He introduced them methodically. Behind me. He said, I have 3 documents from the DOJ production that are emblematic of the massive failure to comply with the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Document 1, an email from victims' lawyers to the DOJ. A list of names not to release, victims whose identities needed to be protected. What did the DOJ do with this email? Massie asked. They published those names anyway. The survivors in the gallery sat up slightly. They were the ones this document had failed. Document 2, the child sex trafficking file. The title of this one, Massie said, is Child Sex Trafficking Co-Conspirators, fully redacted. He held the page up. And by the way, I'm going to redact them here too for this presentation, but Les Wexner is in this now. Now, your deputy AG said he appears hundreds of times in the files, but he doesn't appear in this file until I forced you to release it, where he's listed as a co-conspirator. He paused and looked at Bondi, not to tax evasion, not to prostitution, not to money laundering, to child sex trafficking. Document 3, the FD 3002 release failures. These are the documents you're holding on to, Massie said, and overread redacting because they have the names of the men who are implicated. How do we know? Because the survivors gave testimony to the FBI about these men, and it's in there. Bondi shifted in her seat. She knew what was coming. She had her defense ready. She deployed it. Congressman, I believe Wexner's name was listed more than 4,000 times about I had Massie cut in. Yeah, I already told you that. This is where he's listed as a co-conspirator. Bondi tried to push through. Come on, let me finish my answer. We corrected that within 40 minutes. You're acting like everybody's trying to cover up Wexner's name. Massie looked at her. 4 words within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed. Red-handed? Bondi said, laughing. There was one redaction out of over 4,700. He's listed as a co-conspirator. Massie's voice cut clean through the noise. That one redaction in that specific document, in that specific context, listed him as a co-conspirator to child sex trafficking. That is not a random error. That is the most incriminating document in the set, and that is the one that got redacted. Bondi's composure cracked, and we invited you in. She looked at Chairman Jordan. This guy has Trump derangement syndrome. He needs to... You're a failed politician. The room went still. Not from the insult, which the room had heard in various forms all day, from the fact that the Attorney General of the United States had just called the man who co-authored the law. She was supposed to be complying with a failed politician, rather than answer why a co-conspirator label in a child sex trafficking document had a black box over it. Massie smiled, not a big smile, a small one. The smile of someone who expected exactly this. He kept going. Are you able to track who in your organization made this massive failure and released the victims' names? He asked. And more specifically, who it was that obscured Les Wexner's name as a co-conspirator in that FBI document. Bondi did not name anyone. She did not answer the question about who authorized the redaction. She offered 1800-call FBI. Then Massie played the clip of FBI Director Kash Patel testifying that there was no credible information, none, that Jeffrey Epstein trafficked young women to other individuals. He looked at Bondi. Is that your position as well? Bondi gave the only answer she could without contradicting her director. Any victim who comes forward, we would love to hear from them. Then she deflected to Merrick Garland. Massie let her deflect, and then he delivered the line that will be in the record for as long as this investigation exists. Bondi had brought up the fact that under Garland, no one asked about Epstein, and Massie looked at her and said, I'm glad you're asking about Merrick Garland. This is bigger than Watergate. He paused. You don't have to go back to Biden. Let's go back to Obama. Let's go back to George Bush. This cover-up spans decades, and you are responsible for this portion of it. Here is what those 40 minutes proved. If the redaction of Wexner's name in the child sex trafficking document was a genuine error, a mistake made in the chaos of redacting millions of pages in 30 days, then the correction wouldn't have required monitoring. It would not have required someone watching for the moment a congressman announced the discovery, and then moving immediately to fix it. You do not fix random errors in 40 minutes unless you were already watching for them to be discovered. The speed of the correction is not evidence of efficiency. It is evidence that someone knew exactly where the exposure was. This is what matters. Massie wrote the law. He is not in the opposition party. He has no political incentive to attack a Republican attorney general. He did it anyway, because he spent 2 days in a secure reading room reading the documents, and found the one that could not be explained away. A co-conspirator label, a child sex trafficking document, a black box, and a 40-minute fix, the moment he went public. If you have watched this video, please share it. This is an attorney general whose department redacted the name of a billionaire listed as a potential child sex trafficking co-conspirator in an FBI document, unredacted it in 40 minutes the moment a congressman caught it, called that congressman a failed politician with Trump derangement syndrome when he pointed this out, and could not identify who had made the decision to put the black box there in the first place. Subscribe. I will be covering Wexner's full deposition testimony, released publicly by the Oversight Committee. I will be covering Massie's ongoing contempt proceedings against Bondi for the 3 million missing pages, and I will be covering every name still under a black box in those files that has not yet had a congressman force it into the light. 40 minutes. The speed of a cover-up that knew exactly where it had been caught. One name, one document, one title, child sex trafficking, co-conspirators, and a Republican congressman who wrote the law standing in that room saying 4 words to the Attorney General of the United States within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed.